But welcome to the Career Chat on Public Relations, and we are very fortunate to have two center alums joining us. We have Kathy Keel, and she is Vice President of Public Relations at Doe Anderson. And then we also have Matt Steinfeld, and he is Director of Corporate Communications at SoftBank Corp. And is that a global, that's an international company, right?
Yeah, it's based in Japan.
Okay. So they are both going to talk a little bit about their career path, give general information about the field, and then after that, you guys can ask some questions. So with that, I'm going to let Matt kick it off. And thank you.
All right. It's a bit of a coin toss. Yeah, thank you guys for joining. And I'll keep my comments like pretty short because it's a small room, and maybe we can reserve more time for questions just so we make sure we're giving you the most useful information we can. So I graduated in '06 from Center. A common question I get, particularly from family members, is like, why am I in communications and PR? How did I decide on this career? What does it actually look like? And I really started at Center. When I started at school, I was planning to go to law school. And then I quickly realized that to get into a good law school and do well, it takes a lot of reading and a lot of studying, which were not necessarily my strong suits. But the thing I really thought was appealing about a legal career is I like to write, I like to argue, I like to persuade. And so quickly realized after a couple of internships that a career in communications was a pretty good fit for me. So after graduating, I spent about 8 or 9 years in Washington, D.C., and had a couple of jobs there. I worked in-house at UPS in their government relations office and did a combination of lobbying and communications. Also spent time at an agency in D.C. called the Glover Park Group, which does consulting for companies, nonprofits, some foreign government work, and spent most of my time in DC really trying to build out my experience working with, really sharpening my writing skills, building relationships with media, really understanding how the inside of big companies work and what some of the unique challenges that they have in trying to tell their story publicly. And so in 2013, I moved out to the West Coast. Started at Facebook in their communications team. I was there for about 6 years, working primarily on international and public policy issues. So in all the sort of problems we've had in recent years around security and privacy, the team that I managed oversaw all of the public communications around that. So dealing with reporters, prepping executives for congressional testimony and things like that. And then almost a year ago, left Facebook and joined SoftBank, where I am now. And SoftBank's a Japanese company that's been around for about 40 years. It's an investor in technology companies around the world. They've invested about $50 billion in US companies over the last couple of years. What I'm doing here is really helping this Japanese company that is becoming more of a global brand, help kind of tell its story and help reach new audiences in the US and Europe and beyond. And that is my kind of broad career trajectory. I will maybe pass it over to Kathy to hear a little bit about her experience, which is a bit different from mine. And then we can talk about, I guess, what maybe different views on what we think, what it takes to be successful in the field, tips and tricks, things like that, and then maybe get to your questions. So, Kathy, I'll throw it over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kathy Cadle, and I graduated from Center in '92, so a little bit before Matt. Can you all hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. A little bit before Matt did. I actually have a son there who's a senior, so who does not know we're doing this today, so FYI. I will agree with Matt that being able to write well opens a lot of doors. And how many of you are English majors or history majors? That's what I thought. Welcome, brethren. That will help you a lot, because being able to write well leads right into good communications, um, in all forms, as I hope you know. So don't be discouraged if you're sitting in an interview room getting ready to go in and you're sitting next to someone who has a major in public relations or in communications or their master's in marketing. If you can write well, you can go toe to toe with anybody. So with that said, after graduating from Center, I worked at two different small nonprofits. Um, and the first as a marketing director at the ripe old age of 22, and the second as a marketing and development director. I highly recommend, after graduation, not overlooking the opportunity to work at small nonprofits. It's a great way. Larger agencies and larger employers are wonderful places, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Small nonprofits are great because you've got to do everything because they can't afford a big staff. So it's a really great way to learn how to do all kinds of things. It's a sink or swim situation. So I did that. That's where I did event planning, marketing, PR, volunteer coordination, people management, fundraising, all of that. I got into the healthcare field of PR. I've been in healthcare communications now for 24 years, quite accidentally. I moved, got married and moved to Louisville and was temping while job hunting, and happened to temp at a hospital for a VP. Did some writing there, some just general memo type writing. He was impressed. I met other people there, and that eventually led to a job in the PR department at Jewish Hospital. So there did media relations, everything but paid advertising there. Physician relations, physician education programs, as well as major international media events. We did the first artificial heart implant, the first VADS, the first hand transplant. All of that was part of, I had the heart and lung transplant and plastic surgery service lines. So all of that was a really cool way to learn how to do all of that. Was recruited then to the University of Louisville, where I was director for health sciences communications. What was great about that was I led a team of PR managers, a magazine editor, a web developer, graphic designer, an event coordinator, all of whom knew way more about their jobs than I did. So it was a wonderful opportunity to learn all of those areas while there. I started my own consultancy after about 4 years there, so went out on my own, put out a shingle, and built up my own business. In addition to all the other skills, I added video writing and producing and web content development, web planning to the list of things I had learned to do. After about 7 years, my largest client asked me to come and lead their marketing department for just 9 months while they're going through a merger, just for a very short time. And the merger fell through, so that ended up being 27 months. And it was an ugly failed merger, so it was in crisis mode for quite some time. And had to rebuild their brand from scratch after that. So that was something you had to learn how to do on the job. And then I've been at Doe Anderson now for 4 years. It's my first time being in an agency. Interestingly enough, I did my internship at Doe Anderson the summer between junior and senior year at Center, and started work here 25 years later. So those internships can pay off. And I am really enjoying the agency side. And Matt and I were going to talk a little bit about agency versus in-house in a little bit. And I've got some stuff to say about the industry, but that's the arc, and I've been talking a long time. So I'll turn it back to Matt or to you guys for questions before we talk about PR. It's just a discipline.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just like a couple thoughts, and then we can throw it to questions. I mean, I imagine many of you are thinking like, okay, great, really interesting to hear about your experience. Like, how do I get from here to there? And I think the thing that Kathy said that really resonated with me was this idea of, I can't remember a time where, we've hired somebody or I've been on an interview loop for a candidate where people cared whether the person's career was, or whether their degree was in communications and PR or something else. I think our field in particular really prizes hands-on experience more than anything. You don't have to have a graduate degree, or I've never been asked what my GPA was. It's, can you demonstrate success in the field? And I think that's why it's really important, particularly when you're, still studying undergrad, like identifying internship opportunities or even extracurricular activities where you can sharpen some of those skills around writing and communications, because those are the types of experiences that I think employers really look toward. And looking back, I think I had some fairly good internships at Center, but I candidly wish I had maybe put a bit more effort into it, because I think as I've interviewed candidates coming out of school, there are people with like really impressive backgrounds who have done a whole variety of things, the types of roles that Kathy was talking about earlier, where if you go into a small organization, even as somebody who's still in college, you can actually take on quite a bit of responsibility if you're in a small organization, because they need as many hands and brains as they can get. So I mean, that's kind of one observation. Thinking about the road ahead for somebody who's in college and thinking about going into communications and PR. But I don't know what would be most helpful for you all, for us to kind of continue the discussion.
Questions?
Well, I don't have a question at the moment, but I was really interested in, Kathy, you mentioned that you all would be getting towards talking about agency versus in-house. I'm excited to hear about that.
Oh, sure. Matt, I'll go first and then you can go, because Matt and I both, we just learned, have experience in both. So I spent most of my career in-house. Even when I had my own consultancy, my business model was that I would be the PR person you can't afford. So for each of my clients, I served more an in-house role than I did an agency role. And I would say there are positives and negatives to both. In my experience, being in-house is lovely because you are employed by your client. You still look at your company as a client, but you are fully immersed and fully dedicated to that client. You know the industry backward and forward. You are fully immersed in in your company's goals, and you can be pretty creative, I've found, in the types of solutions you bring to the table. And there's a lot of opportunity for growth in that type of environment. On the agency side, what I have found is one of the frustrations is you're only as embedded in the client as the client allows, which can differ from client to client. On the positive side, it is, again, a great place to learn about other disciplines. You work in teams serving a client, and that's always lovely. And you're not, because you're serving multiple clients and you're not so embedded, I think you're able to give more objective advice to the client, because you are looking at it with a little bit of an outside view. So Matt, you have different perspective than that.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of it. I think a couple of other thoughts. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down, particularly when you're early in your career, it's acknowledging the different learning opportunities that you get depending on which path you choose. So if you go into an agency setting, you're much more likely to get exposed to a wide variety of businesses and organizations and clients. You'll get exposed to different industries in a much faster time frame than if you hopped around from jobs in-house to in-house. And so it's a really good experience that's, like I said, very hard to do if you're just going in-house. It's to the advantage on what you learn being in-house is you get exposed to different functions within inside of a company, right? And so if you, like the agency I worked at in DC, we were all communications and marketing and kind of government relations folks. But when I work inside of a company, I get to work really closely with a legal team and learn how, a big global company has to manage its legal and regulatory issues around the world. You work with sales teams, you work with the folks designing products. And again, one is not necessarily better than the other. They're just different types of learning experiences that you can gain over time. I'll say the thing that's been rewarding, over the last, 2 jobs that I've had in-house is you really have a seat at the table when you're inside the organization. You have an ability to be in settings where the company is trying to figure out whatever its business strategy is, and you're deeply embedded in that, versus in an agency setting, as Kathy said, you only have those opportunities if your client is willing to bring you in. And so that's something that I found rewarding, particularly at Facebook, just given the challenges that the company has had in recent years. The ability to be in the rooms when decisions were being made and helping kind of advise executives on how to manage those are really, challenging, but also rewarding experiences.
Hi, my name's Lily. I'm a senior here. I'm kind of switching topics for a second, but still on PR. So I worked for a PR agency in Louisville this summer and asked them the same question, in that when you're looking at an application or you're interviewing someone, what are the main things that you're looking for when you're looking for someone to be going into PR? And I know there are obviously varying different positions in that, but kind of a generalization, I guess.
I'll take that first, and then Matt, see what you have. First, when you first get the piece of paper, your letter and your resume, it has to be impeccably written. Just get down to basics. There can't be an error. There can't be a grammatical problem at all, especially in PR, because you're asking to be a communicator. You're asking to be the voice of your employer or the voice of your client. So it's important that that voice is error-free. I look for a little bit of cleverness in addition to experience. So anything that is unique, either in the presentation information as well as the experience. And also, don't be afraid to include experiences that may be outside of an internship or of school that might apply. Because in the field of PR is can be pigeonholed as just media relations or just government relations, but it really is, especially in today's world, consumers are, as you all know, your generation especially, that an organization's values are just as important as an organization's products. And so PR infuses everything, community relations, traditional marketing, social media and digital marketing, experiential, internal, all of that has to have a PR eye toward it. And so anything you can do to demonstrate a global view like that is great. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. The other thing I would say is, a lot of our, day-to-day work deals with like communicating a message to somebody who's like bombarded with information, right? The basic like function of the job is helping just get a point across in the right way to the right audience as cleanly and as Kathy said, as cleverly as possible. And so I think the thing to remember about people who get resumes is obviously there's usually a recruiting team, but once it gets to the hiring manager, they have a day job, right? They're doing lots of stuff. And I'll say I spend probably a irresponsibly short period of time with resumes that come into my inbox. And so your ability to really get the point across of your experience and what skills you're bringing to the role is really, really important. I may not read word for word. I agree. you definitely don't want like grammatical errors and things like that in the resume. But I'll confess, I don't read every single resume like word for word. I'm scanning for, you know, what are the types of internships this person has had? What are the types of experiences? What are their accomplishments? What type of impact did they have in the jobs that they've possessed? And so I think being able to convey that really succinctly shows a bit of empathy for the hiring manager who's looking at, you know, dozens and dozens of resumes, but it also shows that you've got the type of critical thinking that's important in the job, because so much of what we have to do on a daily basis is get a point across really cleanly to somebody who's, you know, distracted, not paying attention, has a lot of stuff going on.
If I can just add to that, and this is important in all kinds of writing, not just in cover letter writing or resume writing, is that pith is very important in all kinds of corporate communications. My favorite Mark Twain quote is he was writing a letter to a friend, and at the end he said, "I apologize for the long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one." And getting your point across is so important in today's world. People don't have time to read, or they don't think they have time to read long bits of prose. It takes a lot of work, but be clever and be brief whenever possible.
Thank you. I have another question.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could go back and say something to that center grad that was graduating when you were thinking about going into PR, what would it be?
Matt, I keep going first. You can go first this time.
Yeah. I mean, I touched on this a bit. I think, you know, really trying to focus on getting some hands-on experience in a communications or marketing type, as many communications and marketing type roles as you can, whether that's, you know, summer between classes, or even finding time, you know, during a semester if there's a local organization or a organization on campus that you can really show a potential employer down the road that you were able to accomplish certain things through your, you know, communications and marketing jobs that you've had, I think is really important. That's one thing. The second is, you know, I think so I grew up in Kentucky. I knew about Center before I went to school there. It's obviously like a very good school. If you get out of the state, it doesn't really have that much of a brand. And you have to realize, like, you're competing against, there's lots of centers across the country. And so I think having some humility is always very important. I think when you come out and you're trying to find that, you know, not just your first job, but even your first few kind of steps in your career, understanding that there are a lot of like really talented people out there. And I think the way to differentiate yourself can often be through a lot of the skills you learn at Center, right, around critical thinking and not being taught what to think, but being taught how to think. Being able to demonstrate those are really what set you apart versus just the fact that you went to Center. That's something that I think is, you know, resonated with me when I was kind of going through the process.
Oh, great advice. As Matt said, having a Center degree in Louisville means a lot. Having a Center degree in San Francisco, I'm sure, means very little. It's what you bring to the table. So I would echo that sentiment. And humility is good. Even if you have your Center degree in Louisville, humility goes a long way. I guess I would tell my younger self also to relax a little bit. I'm so thankful for some of the jobs I thought I really wanted that I ended up not getting. Because whatever job you do get, if you excel, if you write well, my first job, which I conveniently skipped over when I was introducing myself, was I did ad sales for 3 months, which, talk about an act of, exercise in humility, try that. But I would offer to write the owner's memos to advertisers. I would offer to write whatever there was to be written, ad copy for advertisers, just to be known as someone who had that skill. So wherever that first job is, just find a way to show what you can do and that will be your ticket to the next thing. Everybody needs to communicate, and whether or not that's your official role, you can find a way to help folks do that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It's just the idea of treating everything as a learning opportunity. I think about the times where I've decided to change jobs, it's always because I felt like I wasn't necessarily learning anything new in the role. And there have been times certainly where I may have applied for something and I didn't get it, or I wanted to take additional responsibility and didn't, or I got asked to take on a project that was, you know, a bit of a backwater. If you go into every opportunity thinking about, okay, what can I learn? How can I grow, you know, both personally and professionally from this? It's a good mindset to have. And I think you know, I look back on things that I remember at the time thinking were really dumb. I remember clients that I had when I was at the agency where I was just like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I learned a lot through those experiences that, you know, I still use today. And so just having that humility, treating everything as an opportunity to learn and grow, you know, I think adds a bit of sanity, particularly when you're trying to, you know, get started.
Yes.
I just have a question. So my name's Samantha. I'm a junior, and my question is, as you progress your careers, what was probably the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you overcome that obstacle? Off the top of your head.
That's a really good question. I would say for me, just getting started is the first. Getting that first job hunting is awful. Don't let anybody tell you any differently. There's ugly and hard. Once you get in the door, at least I have found, and you know, I kind of did that big job hunting twice, first when graduating and then moving to Louisville. Once you get in the door, I have found that working really hard, I mean, it sounds so trite, but working really hard, showing you can write, saying yes to every opportunity you possibly can, and learning really does open the next door. And if you find yourself in an area where those doors aren't opening, then you can start looking again, but at least you're looking from a place of strength, an employed place of strength, and not from nothing. So I would say the biggest challenge is the one you'll be facing in a couple of years. Matt, what do you?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, but just so I don't repeat it, I'll come up with another thing. I think there was a job I had where I was ready to like do something else, and it was almost in some ways repeating the same kind of process that Kathy just talked about when you're, you know, wrapping up school. I think things are different because the financial, I'd saved a little bit of money, so I wasn't like worrying about living on the street at this point. But when you've decided that, you know, your heart's not into something and you need to change the kind of environment you're in, it can be quite challenging, right? Because you're holding down a job in the same way you're holding down your studies, right? It's like, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. And particularly if you're the type of person who doesn't like to ask for help, it can often be very hard just reaching out and cold calling, you know, friends of friends, former colleagues, and really trying to kind of build the network of folks who you can help you think about things in a different way and maybe help open some of those doors like Kathy talked about. And so kind of looking back, you know, at that, you know, chapter of my life where I was thinking, okay, I need to try something else. It was really hard to get started, and you know, being willing to ask for help can be quite challenging. But I think you have to realize, like, everybody's gone through these moments of transition in their career, and sometimes it might, you know, particularly if you're a proud person or a shy person, you may not want to reach out to somebody who's, you know, quite a bit older and like looks like they're busy and they may not have time. But everybody's gone through these moments, and you know, I'm always willing, if somebody wants to take 30 minutes and pick my brain about a job opportunity or advice on different organizations that they might want to join or to work with, always happy to do it. And I think just being able to you know, raise your hand when you're in those moments of trying to figure out, you're not alone. There are folks who can kind of help you think through it.
Thank you.
I've got another question. So my name is Chloe, by the way, and I'm a senior. So I know that, very often, I don't know, well, okay. You all have talked about some of the skills that will help you succeed in this field, such as writing, and Kathy, you even mentioned just saying yes to every opportunity and, working really hard, and that, can be applicable to everyone. Do you all feel like in this field, there's a certain like personality that is, employers are really looking for? Like, if you're not that personality type, like, I don't know, anything to say, like, personality wise, like, does that tend to be, like a box?
That's a very fair question. And here at Doe Anderson, actually, everybody, as part of the hiring process, you take a personality test because they do have, and it's not, I don't fit the personality profile for what my job is. So it's just a kind of a guideline of what your natural strengths and natural weaknesses might be. But what's funny is I have found in PR, which has been kind of confirmed since I've been working here, that people think of PR people as being these gregarious, life of the party type people, and actually everyone in the PR department here leans more introverted than they are extroverted. And I think we're drawn that way because we are drawn to the written word, and it's not that we can't push through our introversion and do our job. We're more comfortable when we know what our job is in a situation. So I would say in agencies, your personality type might weigh more than other places, because this is the only place I've ever worked where that's been part of the process. But I wouldn't look at it as a hindrance. And if you understand your personality and your strengths and your weaknesses, and you can speak to it proactively, then I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't make it a thing to lose sleep over.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends, kind of workplace by workplace. I think the best places that I've worked really actually like actively cultivate diversity of all types, but also in the types of personalities that they have on staff. Because I think somebody who's like really extroverted brings a whole set of creative ways of thinking about an issue. Someone who's very introverted brings a completely different analytical mindset. I think obviously you don't always get to pick the workplace that you step into. If you find yourself in the luxury of having multiple offers and multiple opportunities, I think that's definitely something to focus on and look towards, because first of all, if it's an organization that prizes that type of diversity, that means what you bring to the table is going to be valued, but it also means you're going to get exposed to different types of people, learn from them. And that's, frankly, what makes work interesting, is getting to be with interesting people doing interesting things, right? Regardless of whether it's this field or another one. And so it's a great question to ask. I just think it's something you're probably going to see play out differently depending on the team and on the company.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
I have a question for you guys. Have you completed an internship in the field yet, or are you planning to this summer?
Yeah, hi, this is Lily again. I don't know how well you guys can see us. Yeah, I completed an internship. So I worked at Tandem Public Relations in Louisville this past summer, which was a really amazing opportunity I'm sure you've probably heard of it or interacted with it at some point, Kathy. But it's a really great company and firm that is about an 8-person office. So it gave me a lot of opportunities to grow under really incredible management. And what was really helpful for me in that situation and in that internship opportunity, which I'm kind of looking for in a career post-grad, is that they were very encouraging of understanding this is a two-way street, and that like I'm investing in them and they're investing in me back. And that like I'm coming out of center and I'm not having as ample, communication experience as someone who has a master's and has been working in the field for 5 years. And so I do need to be taught certain things, and that, I might not get it right the first time or the second time, but I will get it right the third time, and then it will be right from them. And from then on. So that was a really great opportunity. And then I've done some marketing and PR stuff with Center, working for the Student Activities Council, my fraternity, and then I'm also starting an internship with Wilderness Trail in marketing.
Perfect. I do recommend, because coming out of Center, and I'm a huge believer in liberal arts education, I think it makes us, as Matt said, we're interesting people, and we are fascinated by the world because of this foundation that Center gives you. But internship does help. It's a good resume builder, because coming out, I'm a proud English major, history minor, but that when you're applying for a PR job, if that's all that's on it, it's like, okay, what are you doing? And for those of you in or around Louisville, Doe Anderson does have a great summer internship program, and applications are being taken now, so you can check it out.
I have a quick question. You both talked about how important writing is to public relations. When you're applying for an internship or a job, is it a good idea to have writing samples of some kind, or to be thinking about that?
A lot of places require it. We would, for the PR position internship, they will ask for writing samples of what you've done. So yeah, and some places require live on-site writing tests, which again, being from Center, would not be a problem for you, but they're required pretty often, especially for entry-level positions.
I was just gonna say, like,
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to, I was just gonna say, I think it's helpful just to keep some things you're particularly proud of on hand, even if they're not necessarily requested of you. Sometimes they'll be requested on short notice. So I just think maintaining, and even if it, practicing like writing an op-ed or something like that, I think can be really helpful. It's sometimes, it's less important that you actually like went and placed an op-ed, but showing that you can distill an argument down to like 600 or 700 words and it's interesting and engaging is it's helpful. So even if it's a bit of make work, I think it can be helpful in setting yourself apart from other people.
So, sorry, you really just answered my question, because I was going to ask what types of writing samples that you think would be most valuable. So, I mean, I personally am not involved in any internships where I would be writing an op-ed for some type of newspaper or something. But like, would you advise maybe just doing it just as like maybe even a hobby and just having it on hand as a writing sample for applications?
Yeah,
Well,
I think having a few samples is helpful. Oh, sorry, Kathy.
Go ahead, Matt. No, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I was the great thing now.
I'm going on mute. Sorry.
Oh, okay. The great thing now is you could start a blog. I mean, it is good to have published writing samples, but you can self-publish now. So you could do a blog of pieces on a given subject or a range of subjects. Does Center still have the Cento? Is that what it was? The Center newspaper? But Matt's,
It's
okay.
It's virtual now.
But Matt's idea of writing op-eds is fantastic. Doing guest articles and that is great. Any place where you can get published, which is way easier now than it used to be. And Matt, I will shut up and go on mute.
No, that's great. No, the other thing that I think is helpful, particularly like once you're talking to a potential employer, even if it's an informational interview, I think is showing them, like, let's say you have a conversation about, let's say you're meeting with someone from Doe Anderson and Kathy told you about an interesting client or something like that in the conversation, following up with like a thoughtful note. It's not just like, oh, thanks for meeting, here's how great I am, but it shows you've kind of reflected on the conversation. Maybe you've done a little bit of research and you're able to follow up with saying, oh, I read this interesting article about the client you mentioned, and here's sort of my kind of take on it. I think it's often helpful because, again, a lot of what we do is that like real time in the moment, having to like take a bunch of information, distill it into something interesting. That's one way to like force yourself to do some writing in the moment, because then it will hopefully be relevant to the person that you just met with on a topic that they're interested in. that's something that I've seen candidates do that's been really impressive to me, and also something I've tried to do when taking those kinds of meetings.
Great advice.
We're getting close here. Do you guys have any closing thoughts for us?
I would just say, we've talked about writing a lot, but I think Matt and I both said treat every meeting, every interview, every experience as a learning opportunity. That's what you went to Center to become. That lifelong learner thing that you're sick of hearing about is really extraordinarily useful in the real world. So take every learning and apply it to whatever you do next, and it opens doors.
Yeah, and I think, just obviously you should also pat yourself on the back for taking time out of the day to do these types of things, not necessarily to listen to Kathy and me, but just to, step back from your day to day and think about, what you want to do with your career, what are the steps that are required to do it, because, I think that in any job, I think a trap that a lot of people fall into is that they expect that they're going to kind of step into an organization and those, their managers are never going to help them figure out what their career looks like. And in reality, you're going to be the best advocate for your own professional development. Obviously, you should have good managers who help you on that journey, but it's something that you have to take ownership of. And so I think taking these opportunities, really good use of time, and obviously encourage you to do it when you get time, knowing there's a lot of demands on you as students. Yeah.
Thank you both. Good information.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.